Hello and welcome to Indian Standard Time. I'm Siddharth Varadarajan. The last time we discussed Syria in this program was earlier this year in January when Dr. Muallim, the Foreign Minister of Syria, was in Delhi, and we spoke at length about the state of the civil war in that country and the prospects for a negotiated settlement, because we were at that point on the eve of peace talks that the international community had strived for and was looking forward to. Since then, there have been two rounds of dialogue between the Syrian government and the forces, some of the forces arrayed against it. But we have seen over the last couple of weeks resumption of hostilities and a deterioration on the ground, particularly as the state of battle between the Syrian government and the forces ranged against it has intensified. Joining me to discuss the situation on the ground in Syria, the prospects for dialogue and diplomacy, and the role of different powers in the region and around the world, is the Ambassador of Syria to India, Dr. Riad Kamel Abbas. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you.
As I said, the last time we talked about Syria was with your Foreign Minister, and we were on the eve of the dialogue process. We've had two rounds, and recently there was a statement from Staffan de Mistura, the United Nations High Representative for the Syrian peace process, who said that the prospects for a third round of talks does not look very bright, and he didn't think there was any value in convening such a dialogue again until at least August. Are we to understand then that the dialogue process, the peace process, has essentially been a failure and is dead? Or in your view and in the view of the Syrian government, is there still some possibility of dialogue, negotiations as a way of ending this deadly conflict?
Thank you for your question, but in the beginning, allow me to say that we highly appreciate Indian position about Syrian crisis. If any country do like India, we have no problem in Syria. The main problem in our country is the intervention in our issue. This not exactly internal intervention. And since the beginning of our issue, we announced that there is no country for terrorism, there is no border for terrorism. Terrorism will spread everywhere. And we have seen what happened in the earth, not only in Syria, in Asia or in Europe or in other countries. Third, for Geneva, and before Geneva, we announced we would like to solve our issue by political solution, by internal the dialogue between the Syrian government and opposition. Nobody listened to us on those three issues. We didn't find united opposition. According to international committee who asked us for Geneva meeting, we accept and we attend all the meeting of Geneva, except one meeting maybe in the beginning. They took their decision without our part. We went to Geneva and we announced about our principle to solve our problem, but we don't see from their side any action, and we don't see united opposition, and they flee out from last meeting in Geneva. Why? They went because we put them in the corner and they couldn't reply for our principle to solve the meeting, to solve the issue in Syria. The main problem in Syria now, why we would like to hide ourselves? You have to know what is the main problem. The main problem, there is terror groups and there is Syrian government. There is radicalism group who belong to Islam exactly, and there is secular regime Syrian government. Who would like to support radicalism, terrorism, Wahhabism, or you would like to support the government who came to the power by majority support of our country, our people? We send our principle. I can't count it all, but most of them in this principle is to fight terrorism, to refuse any external intervention in the ground, and to form national united government. And we change our constitution, and we make election, parliament election, presidential election, whatever we like, we can do by ourselves. But we saw in Geneva, there is a representative of countries. We don't see Syrian opposition exactly. They talk on behalf of their supporter, of their sponsor in Geneva. One part speak on behalf of Saudi Arabia, one part on behalf of Qatar, one part on behalf of French, one part on behalf of America. And there is no Syrian united opposition to talk with them. How we can solve it? As we said, political solution. Yes, political solution. Because of that, I said in the beginning, we highly appreciate Indian position to find, who asked to find political solution and no external intervention, and to execute the aspiration of our people. How we can solve without that? Because of this, Mr. de Mistura said maybe last round of meeting is dead, because he can't find the united opposition who can hold the aspiration of our people. There is only one side, is the government of Syria. This, and I would like to update you about the situation in the ground. When they announced for ceasefire in the ground, one order of our army, they execute the ceasefire. But from other part, who can execute the ceasefire? There is many parts in the ground. As I said, one group belong to Qatar, one group belong to Saudi Arabia, other to Western country. They couldn't make ceasefire from their side.
They allege, and their Western backers allege, that in the name of targeting ISIS, against whom there was no ceasefire, for obvious reasons, the Syrian government was taking advantage of that and targeting some of the other groups. Do you accept that allegation, or do you?
No, I will tell you frankly, for our view, all terror group belong to radical of Islam. They are terror. They are terror. We cannot talk with them. We cannot do anything. But because we execute and we accept the will of international committee, and we made a ceasefire from our side. But from their side, they don't execute the ceasefire. They remain fight against our army, and they take this time of ceasefire to rebuild their forces and to bring more and more weapons, and they get more support from Turkey, from other countries who support them in the ground.
You know, it had seemed earlier this year that because of the attack, the terrorist attack in France, the Bataclan massacre, the French might be willing to re-evaluate their attitude towards Syria. And there was also the effect of the Russian assistance to the government of Syria, their military contribution to your effort, which also changed things on the ground and gave the upper hand back to the Syrian government. And there was a sense that perhaps the West might be willing to try a different approach and deal with the threat of terrorism as a priority rather than pushing for regime change. Is it your understanding as Syria, as the government of Syria, that the priority for France, the United States, who are the main Western players in this, is still to fight terror, or is it to get rid of the Assad regime change? What do you think is their priority?
For our priority to fight terrorism in the ground. But from where terrorism came? Who support terrorism? From where the culture of terrorism? Is it terrorism holding secularism or holding Wahhabism? Wahhabism created in our country or other country? Who support Wahhabism? Definitely Saudi Arabia. Who is behind Saudi Arabia? Western country and America. Understand? From the beginning, we said that to stop terrorism, if you don't like to support us, we need from your side only make pressure on those countries to close their border, especially Turkey, and our army can take his duty and we can defeat immediately terrorism. Because of that, we said there is double standard policy. They announce we will fight terrorism, but in the ground from other side we see still the border is open and still they have American weapons, still they have funding from Saudi Arabia and from Qatar state, understand? And still terrorism gets support till now from those states. And we have seen what happened in Paris. We announced from the beginning terror will cross the border. And because there is no political relation with the French, we send our list for French government, take care some terror group went to your country. And we send the list and they turn it back to us, they don't open it, but in this letter we discover this man who made this operation, bad operation in playground in Paris, we were put his name in this paper, which we sent to to French government. French government till now support terrorism. There is no doubt on that, and we didn't invite any foreigner to come to our country for supporting us, except Russian government and some expert from Iran country. Understand? Any soldier came to our ground, we consider that is an enemy. Who invite you to come? For what you are coming? What is your agenda? Understand? What is the aims of those people who came from outside to fight against our government? They came to Syria to build democracy, or they came to Syria to build the Islamic State? Who supports them? Who allows them to come? Definitely Western state, some Western state and America, and Saudi Arabia and Qatar and Turkey.
Mr. Ambassador, as the prospect of dialogue recedes, we've seen an intensification of the fighting, and in particular around Aleppo, Halab, the fighting has intensified. There are concerns about the effect of this on the civilian population, those that still live, those who haven't fled already, and in particular the suburb of Daraya. There's talk of indiscriminate bombing by the Syrian Air Force, dropping of barrel bombs. How do you respond to these allegations that the Syrian government is engaging in the indiscriminate use of force and is ending up causing a large number of civilian casualties?
Yes, my dear, any government in the world has to protect its people. That is what our government do. Why we don't go immediately to Raqqa, for example, to Raqqa? We send awareness for our people to pull out because this Raqqa controlled by ISIS. This, for example, our army will not enter any civilian society, civilian colony without send awareness for the people to pull out. Because the strategy of terrorism to hide themselves between the civilian and shoot our army. Definitely there is some innocent people will kill, but what we can do? This is the war. And all civilian people, most of the civilian people came to under the control of our army in the area where there is Syrian army. And other people who hide themselves in those societies, they are the family of those terror group. They couldn't pull out. Because of that, when we shot those terror group, maybe some civilian will kill. This is a war. We cannot select from the high sky who is the terror group or other things, understand? But we send awareness before did any military operation everywhere there is civilian in our society. But those terror group, because of their support, and they have big supporting from international media who belong to Western state and GCC country, they give different view what is going on in the ground. Who killed the civilian in our society? Did our army also kill civilian in our society where there is a Syrian army? In Damascus, for example, there is no Syrian army inside Damascus. Who sent the mortar on the civilian in Damascus? Why nobody talk about that on the media? Only they speak on their side, always support their side, because most of media take their report from Western media. But in the ground, it's not like that, it's opposite. Our civilian suffering from those terror group kill our civilian people from our side. Nobody talk about that.
We were talking about Russian assistance to the Syrian government. We saw that President Putin sent military advisors and equipment at a crucial time in the war, and because of the Russian presence and the use of Russian Air Force and advisors, in many ways you managed to turn the tide and push back some of these radical groups. Since then, of course, the Russians have scaled down their military involvement. They've pulled back in a way. How do you evaluate the Russian decision to enter and the Russian decision to exit? Is the Syrian government satisfied with what has happened, or do you feel that the Russians need to continue to remain engaged?
I would like to approve you on this. We are fighting terrorism on behalf of the world.
On behalf of the world?
Yes.
Right.
Because only Syrian army fight terrorism now, and all the world facing from terror, and nobody support us except those countries what we are mentioning. Russian forces came to Syria by Syrian government request. They came legally to Syria because we have strategic relation with Russia since the independence of our country, and we have many agreements between the both countries, Syria and Russia, on this. And Russia has marine Russian bases in Syria and Air Force bases in Syria. They came to support our army against terrorism, not only because we are allied, because forces will affect every country in the world. This is the equity for any country to understand. Terrorism not only fighting against Syrian army, terrorism will reach everywhere in the world. And any government has to protect its people. And Russian army send troops to Syria and retire some of those troops to their country because they would like to keep space for a political solution. They thought that now is it the right time for sitting on the table to discuss to find the political solution.
The Geneva process.
The Geneva process.
Yes.
And they saw that there is no opposition, there is no process for peace, and they remain now support our army against terrorism. What we can describe those Turkestan people who came from China to fight against our army, to kill our people, for what? What is the aims for those people? To build democracy? I confusing how Western state thinking. Why you would like to support those radical people who would like to kill you? I don't know why. What they need.
As the prospects for dialogue recede and that space for a political solution which Russia thought might be created if they withdrew, as that space in a way disappears, do you think it's possible that the Russian involvement, military involvement in Syria might resume, might go back to the earlier level?
I think so. Yes, Russia will support our army till the end against terrorism, because they saw in the ground there is terrorism, there is real terrorism, and we announce and we welcome any media to come to Syria and see in the ground what happened. Those people who are not Syrian, for what came to Syria, what they need, what their aims. But we are fighting big army of mercenaries, came from 83 countries, and this army led by America. This dirty war made by America against our government to change their policy in Middle East, or to change the government of Syria by force. That is democracy. We have seen what happened in Libya. That is the democracy, to change the regime in Libya. They kill the president of Libya. Where is Libya now? Where is the democracy? Where is the security in those countries which they pass in spring way, Arab Spring or something, what they call? Where is the security and democracy? If that is the democracy, that is the American democracy, we don't need democracy in our country. They destroy our country under the name of democracy.
Mr. Ambassador, apart from the US, which has been driving a lot of this, as you say, what's unique about the Syrian war is also the involvement of your neighbors. You have Turkey, you mentioned Saudi Arabia, you mentioned Qatar. What is driving the policy of a state like Turkey, where instability in a neighboring country like Syria has led to huge refugee flow? It's destabilizing even for the Turks. What's the end game as far as Ankara is concerned? Where do you think they see this going? A partition of the country?
They thought that in the beginning, within 1 month, they will throw down the regime in Syria. They don't think it will take with them a long time, and the affection will come back to their side. Understand? Their aim is to change the regime in Syria. Understand? And they get support from Western states and America. Is available democracy in Saudi Arabia? What Saudi Arabia need? Democracy in Syria? Build the democracy in Saudi Arabia to see. Where is the human right? Where is the constitution in Saudi Arabia, for example? Where is the woman right in Saudi Arabia? But as I said, under the name of democracy, they need other things from Syria. They need to change the regime of Syria. They need to change the policy of Syria in Middle East. The main reason, that is why they would like to change the regime. They need to supply gas pipeline from Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Syria to Europe, because they need to contain the pipeline of Russia. They need to contain Russia. Understand? Our regime refused this conspiracy against our friendly country. Understand? That is why they need to change the regime in Syria and the policy of our government. But they couldn't do it. And you have seen what happened now. And you will see what will happen next month and next year in Turkey. They will face the same problem what we are facing in Syria. Those terror groups, they don't have a country, they have no border. They will make the same problem in Turkey and in other country, neighboring country. But they are stupid politicians. We have seen what happened now in Turkey. Because of their wrong policy in Syria. And the same happened in Paris, because they took wrong policy against the Syrian government. They support terrorism and they thought they will be on peace. Terrorism will not come back to their ground.
Mr. Ambassador, a final question. You said at the beginning of the interview that you appreciated India's position. Now, our Prime Minister, Mr. Modi, recently went to Qatar. He has been to Saudi Arabia as well. We have very good relations with those countries. And clearly, I think India would like a situation where Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Syria, of course the United States, and all regional and international players find a negotiated or a diplomatic solution to this. But that seems increasingly unlikely. Is there any role you think that India could play, a constructive role to push things in a positive direction?
India is a great country and has a strong voice in international arena. And we would like India to involve for peace. And we highly appreciate their principle for peace and their principle to solve our Syrian issue. And we highly appreciate the talks of Mr. Modi when he said there is no good terrorism and bad terrorism. Terrorism is terrorism everywhere. Understand? That is the strategy. Because of that, I said we highly appreciate Indian position. Indian position, they don't like any external intervention, not only in Syria, everywhere. If any country does the same, we have no problem in Syria. In Syria, not internal intervention, this external intervention made by America and their equipment followers in the region. Understand? That is why we said we highly appreciate Indian position.
On that note, Ambassador Abbas, we're completely out of time. Thank you very much for joining us on this episode of Indian Standard Time.
Thank you for coming. Thank you for.
That wraps up this episode of IST. Do join us again next week where we will have another guest. Thank you for watching.